Did not have that or did not take the oath at our first meeting. So if that was the case, please stand up. And all of you that are here today have taken the oath, and we'll move on to the next item. Okay. So Anita Flanagan, who's our assistant clerk of the board, will be giving the oath. Please just stand and raise your right hand. She will read it, and then after the meeting, if you come back and see me, we'll have you sign it.
Sure.
Mr. Harvey and Mr. Hoffa, so they will do it at the same time.
Yes. And I'll just say the name.
Okay. I state your name.
I, Ben Harvey,
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
Do solemnly
swear that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against
all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution
that I will bear
true faith and allegiance to the Constitution
of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
of
of the United States
and
and
of the state of California.
California.
that I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
And I
I will
take
take
this
this obligation freely without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will
well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you. And at this time, we'd like to take roll. So as we go around the table, if you could state your name, your jurisdiction, if you're a primary or an alternate, and if there's an alternate here from your jurisdiction in the audience and you wish to introduce them, you can do that as well. So, Mr. Palacios?
I'm Carlos Palacios, Santa Cruz County, and I'm an alternate for Susan Mariello.
Ray Espinoza, County of San Benito, CAO.
This is the PC.
I'm the person. I'm the guy.
Ben Harvey, City of Pacific Grove. I believe I'm the shared seat representative for the, what are we calling that section of the peninsula?
I'm Scott Collins, Deputy City Manager for the City of Santa Cruz, and I will be the representative.
Charles Montoya, City of Watsonville, on the rep.
Move out of Monterey County on the primary.
Ray Corpus, City of Salinas, I'm the primary. Lane Lawrence, representative of the
Jamie Goldstein, representing the Santa Cruz County cities, and I'm primary.
Ellen Hoffa, I think I may be confused. I am on one of the electeds for our elected board, and so I thought today was our meeting.
No, this is an operations board meeting, and so you'll be on the policy board as an elected.
Gotcha.
So,
I'm going to observe if that's okay.
that's fine. Certainly. And what's it, where are you from?
I'm representing the peninsula. I'm the primary elected for the peninsula.
Okay, next item on the agenda is oral communications for items not on today's agenda. So if there's a member of the public who'd like to come up and speak, we have a microphone over here on the right, or the left, depending on where you're sitting.
Good morning. This will be short. My name is Dan Nelson. I am the Deputy Director of the Romero Institute. I just want to make a couple comments about the role that the grassroots played in kind of putting this program together. I think we didn't do a very good job last time of giving a proper update. So especially the communities in Santa Cruz who were not so engaged with the grassroots, nonprofit organizations, volunteers who did the mobilization and the grassroots public education to kind of expand the scope of the program. I just want to make kind of give some sense of how large that was. So our nonprofit spent about $500,000 doing public outreach to make sure that this was a 21 jurisdiction effort and not just 6 or 7. And we also teamed up with Protect Monterey County and Communities for Sustainable Monterey County and various other nonprofit groups to make sure that that public outreach happened. We worked, of course, with Miller Maxfield to do that, but I just want to be clear that we, as the public, intend to stay very close to the project and make sure that we're giving input. And the most important thing to us, of course, is climate action, as well as the creation of local, green, well-paying jobs. So over time, we will stay engaged. We're going to form a committee that will formally kind of keep tabs on what's going on and produce talking points and information that will be relevant to the work that you do. So I just want to thank you for your time and for your cooperation and partnership with the public in this effort, and we will see you again soon. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? All right, thank you very much. So then we will be moving on to item number 4 on our regular agenda, which is the selection of the chair and vice chair of the operations board. So sections 3.9.1 and 3.9.4 of the Joint Powers Agreement outlines the selection of the chair for the operations board as well as the vice chair. They should be members of the board, and the vice chair will serve in the absence of the chair. The term will be for 1 year, but there will be no limit on the number of terms that they can serve. In addition, the board will appoint a secretary who may serve both the policy and the operations board and be responsible for taking minutes and maintaining records. And the secretary need not be a member of the board. So as you will recall, on May 3rd, our first joint policy and operations board meeting, we had set May 17th as the deadline to submit a self-nomination to me if you were interested in either the chair or the vice chair position, as well as the secretary. I received 1 nomination for chair. That was from Mr. Rene Mendez from the city of Gonzales. His resume is included in your board packet. There were no nominations for vice chair. So at this time, we, and as you can see, Mr. Mendez is not here. So.
Seriously,
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Just a minute, John. Just a minute. No, see what you be able to advance.
Okay. Dave, would you mind advancing the slide? Oh, no, excuse me, you already did? I apologize.
So at this time, we're asking that the board can, for the vice chair, either nominate someone for that position, or we can go out and extend the time for self-nominations again. So I guess at this time, we are requesting discussion in regards to Mr. Mendez being the chair of the operations board, and then taking nominations for the selection of the vice chair.
I nominate Mr. Mendez.
I'll second that.
Who was the seconder?
Mr. Bowman. And Charles was the...
Could I make that subsequent motion? You're ready for us to be vice chair, are we ready to do that?
I think we'll do the chair first.
Okay.
Anyone who'd like to speak from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for a vote on the chair for the operations board of Monterey Bay Community Health. And as you vote, if you want to keep your hands raised, just so we can make sure that the clerk records the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Congratulations.
Yes.
That's right.
Well, I think, well, thank you, everybody. I somebody had to step up, and I had a few people call me to do it, so I decided to do it, but hopefully everybody will take our turn over the next several years as we get this done. So at this point, I'd like to entertain nominations for vice chair.
I would nominate my colleague Ray Corpus.
Second.
Second. Second, Carlos. Any other nominations? Okay, any public comment? Okay, close. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Ray,
Okay, Renee.
you're in. You're in. Well, thank you, everybody. Everybody, make sure to take a number, because it's going to be next. I'd like to move on to item number 5, discussion of MBCP administrative and organizational updates.
I think we also want to select.
Oh, the secretary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm sorry.
would move the appointment of Ms. Gaz as secretary, was that the nomination?
Yeah,
Yes, that was,
the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Jamie, second by Ray. Any public discussion? Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passed unanimously. All right, going on to item number 5, discussion of MBCP administrative and organizational updates. Davenport?
so at this time, we have a few items that we want to review. One of them being the banking and credit update. So for that information, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Rutledge from the County of Santa Cruz and Carlos Palacios from the county as well.
All right, good morning. So since the last meeting on May 3rd, representatives from the 3 counties have met to start reviewing the required documents for entering into the credit guarantee for the startup funding. River City Bank has indicated that they would only be willing to accept up to 10% of the risk on San Benito County. And at this time, Santa Cruz County and Monterey County have agreed to pick up the additional share required for that guarantee. At this point, negotiations are ongoing with the bank, but we anticipate that each of the counties would need to adopt the guarantee agreements before the end of July to stay on schedule for the policy board to adopt agreements in August. So the County of Santa Cruz at this point is on schedule to adopt the guarantee on June 27th. So that's the schedule we're looking for, and so we're really looking to the other 2 counties to move forward as well and to start entering into any kind of required interagency agreements that that each county intends to enter into with their cities.
Let me just summarize again the structure of the credit guarantee. So this is initially for startup funding, right? And we're talking about up to $3 million. And this will be the initial funding that will get us through until we have generated money after launch, right? So it's anticipated to be for a year, possibly 2 years. The agreement that we had come to was that the credit guarantee for this startup funding would be shared by seat. So it would be 1/11 basically of that credit guarantee per seat. And the bank doesn't want to deal with all 19 jurisdictions, and so they had expressed a preference with dealing with the counties. So the idea was that the counties would each take the credit guarantee for themselves and for their cities and enter into the agreement. So the River City Bank would have an agreement with 3 entities, all 3 counties basically. And then each county would enter into an agreement with each of its cities. And it would be a side agreement in which we would get a guarantee from our cities for that portion of their debt, or their credit agreement rather. So for example, in Monterey County, in Santa Cruz County's case, we would take the debt or the credit guarantee for the county of Santa Cruz plus the 4 cities. And there's 3 permanent seats, Santa Cruz County, Santa Cruz, and Watsonville. And then there's one shared seat between Capitola and Scotts Valley. The shared seat, they would still take 1/11 of that guarantee, but they would split it equally, right? So in this case, Capitola and Scotts Valley would share their portion of that 1/11 of the credit guarantee equally. If there had been three, they would share it by thirds, right? We'd agreed that it was just going to be shared equally, not proportionally or any other way, when there's a shared seat. So the complication arose in that San Benito County, the bank, normally they would have had to guarantee 18%, because that's equivalent to the number of seats they have. But the bank said they would only take up to 10% for San Benito County. And so the idea that we suggested was that that extra 8% be taken on by Monterey and Santa Cruz County. So we would take not only our guarantee for our entire county, but we would take the additional 4% from San Benito, and then we would enter into a side agreement with San Benito for that extra 4%. So the questions that have arisen is that, this debt, or this, it's not a debt, rather it's a credit guarantee. What is it, how do you characterize it? And so based on the work for Silicon Valley Clean Energy and River City Bank, our auditor and our county council have determined that we do not need to provide a cash set aside to guarantee that credit guarantee. The bank did leave that as an option. They said if you want to set aside cash, that's certainly acceptable. But they also said we don't require that, and that it could be just a written credit guarantee. So our auditor, county auditor, and our county council have agreed that, for us anyway, we do not need to set aside that cash. So it's somewhat similar to a contingent liability in that sense. So what we need to do is we have to have agreements, 3 agreements. Those 3 main agreements between the 3 counties and River City Bank. That's where we're going to actually get the cash, whatever the $3 million startup. And then we need each city to enter into a side agreement with its county. So in our case, we would have to enter into an agreement with each of our cities, a side agreement for that, their portion of the credit guarantee. And again, it's divided by seat, and there's 11 seats. So Watsonville and City of Santa Cruz will have 1/11 of that credit guarantee that they're going to sign an agreement with us. Capitola and Scotts Valley will share 1 seat, so they'll share 1/11. There'll be a side agreement. So that means that we have to go to our board with the credit guarantee with the bank, and then we have to get the agreements with each of our cities. And it also means that each of your cities have to take that side agreement to your council and get that approved as well. And so we have, we're developing model agreements that at least is acceptable to our auditor and our county council, and we're working with the bank on that. The urgency in terms of timing is that we're trying to launch by next spring, right? So next April, May, because of the seasonality of how the energy markets work, you pretty much have a window in the spring of next year, 2018, if you're going to launch. Otherwise, you pretty much have to wait for another entire year to be able to buy those power contracts. I don't understand all the technicalities, but that's what we've been told. So we have a window of launching next spring. So that means we have a lot of work before then. And we are going to need to do some work with an interim CEO to develop, especially an implementation plan, which is going to be, there's a work plan that's going to have to be developed, but one of them is an implementation plan that's going to be approved by the PUC. And then there's also various analysis of our market, of our customers, and there's outreach to our residents. There's a lot of work in between when we get going and the actual launch next spring. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So we're going to be considering recommending to the policy board the hiring of an interim CEO, and the idea would be that the interim CEO, when approved by the policy board, would then take this ball and start running at full speed ahead, because it's going to be a very busy next 9 months or so to get this, if we're going to launch. So our urgency is that there's no money to pay the new interim CEO or staff. We're going to need not only an interim CEO, but some other staff who will be, for example, a financial person to help set up the books, and then there's going to have to be various marketing consultants and so forth. So right now, we don't have any cash. And so what we're going to be considering next on the agenda, I believe, or down the agenda, is an agreement with Santa Cruz County where we're agreeing to front the money for a few months until this operation gets its own cash through a startup loan. And so obviously, we don't have an unlimited ability to absorb the cost of this agency. We're not going to fund it forever. We've agreed to fund it for a few months to get that off. But the idea would be that if we could get the credit agreement with the bank, the site agreements with all our cities, we're hoping by the end of July, that would be the ideal, early August, and then that way we could start operating with our interim CEO, and they would have their own cash availability to launch and get going. In the meantime, once the CEO is hired, initially is going to be paid from Santa Cruz County, and so we're going to be fronting, some money to get this operation going. But again, it's not unlimited. So so we have a sense of urgency in sense of wanting to get this credit guarantee in place. And I know that it's complicated because I know that we have our auditor controllers involved in the counties, we have our county councils involved, and then you're going to have your city attorneys, and then we're going to each have to go to our boards or your city councils to get approval. So it's a complicated process. There's a tight time frame, and so that's the urgency that I'm trying to convey, is that we really focus on this and get it done. I know that River City Bank did do this already with Silicon Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, so it's already been done. There's been some analysis, and that's what we relied on, frankly. In our auditor, our county council relied a lot on the work that's been done in Santa Clara with Silicon Valley Clean Energy, in terms of and they also worked with River City Bank. So anyway, that's our presentation, and if you folks have questions, we'd be happy to take them and just enter more into discussion on this.
Any questions? Jamie?
Carlos, are you prepared at the county to sign the credit guarantee with River City Bank first and then trail with us cities? Like, take something to your board ASAP on your side of the credit guarantee, and then, I can give you assurance that we'll be recommending.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
I think so. I'm looking at my county council here. Yes, yes,
You,
yes.
Santa Cruz County,
Yeah.
are prepared to sign the
Right.
credit guarantee as soon as you get authorization from your board, and
Right.
then we'll,
Follow.
okay.
Yes.
Well, I think that's advisable, because I can imagine that,
It's going to take time to go to each city council and so forth.
right, and summer schedules are gonna,
And that's that's us. I don't know how Lou and Ray feel, because they also are going to have to deal with your own county council and your own.
The side agreements are not a requirement of the bank, right?
right, I understand.
And in the case of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, they actually didn't even have site agreements with their cities. They just had a few jurisdictions. I think it was just the county or two?
County.
Three.
Cities, yeah.
Three. They took all the credit guarantee without any even site agreements. They just took it on themselves. But in our case, we're wanting to do that, and so we're able to do that. I don't know, and I know Lou and Ray are working on this as well.
Lou?
So, I think our biggest challenge is time, because just keep in context, you guys have 4 jurisdictions, we have 12 to deal with. And so, we're gonna need to see the loan documents, and for us to get this done by the end of July, I think is extremely optimistic. So if you guys are willing to cash flow this to get us through, maybe at the end of August when our board reconvenes, early September, because, in addition, you've got to keep in mind that the way these loan agreements work, if there's a default, we all have to pay. And so a default could be if the JPA doesn't pay its interest, if the markets fall through. So, whether or not you've budgeted this, you have to be prepared in the event of a default to come forth with your respective allocation. So we got to get this through 12 city attorneys. We got to figure out what the appropriate collateral is with Santa Cruz County, and to do that all in 6 weeks is gonna be a heck of a challenge. I mean, we're gonna commit to do the very best we can, but we should keep in mind that, this may take a little bit longer than that. So
We
the other
have go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to finish up.
Okay.
The other alternative to make this dramatically more simple is all of us could just simply deposit the cash. That's another financial option, is just deposit the cash with the bank or one of the jurisdictions and be done with it. And that would just be really straightforward. So I don't know how much 90 grand, would impact smaller jurisdictions, but I believe we've budgeted the money, and it'd just be much faster if we did it that way.
Yeah, that's one of the options the bank laid out, was just cash guarantee, and that's certainly possible. It's definitely doable for some jurisdictions. Others may not be able to, but some could, and that would be a very quick way to get this done, because then it's just a council approving, depositing the money in some way. You'd have to work that out with your county, how you want that money deposited, but I'm sure that can be worked out very quickly. Our sense of urgency is that once we hire the interim CEO, and we're undertaking some costs right now, but the costs are going to escalate very quickly, and we're willing to do that for a couple months, but then there's a hard deadline. I'm not going to take on, because then I talk about an unrestricted guarantee. We're willing to take a little bit of a hit, but it's not unlimited. And so we do have the loan agreements, the model, they're pretty much ready. Is that correct? Where are we with them?
We have the guarantee agreement
We have the guarantee agreement with, who's that with?
with River City Bank.
With the bank. So we have that available now, the credit guarantee between the counties and the bank. And then we're developing our own side agreement with our cities. I know your county council will have to develop your own agreements with your cities. But we'll have a model you could certainly borrow.
And that's all fine and good, but the loan agreement is what we really need to see.
Yeah.
Because the credit agreement links to
Yeah.
that, and so we need to know what the provisions are for noticing payment.
Yeah. And we have that.
We do not have the loan agreement
Oh, the
yet.
loan agreement
So
yet.
they won't,
Okay.
they won't
Okay.
do the loan agreement until we actually have credit approval, which we do not have.
That's not gonna work.
But we will soon.
That isn't gonna work. So we need to meet with the bank. I mean,
Okay.
how can they expect us to negotiate credit agreements and go to our boards and councils when we don't even have a loan agreement?
Okay.
I mean, we've seen the model of the credit agreement, of the loan agreement that Silicon Valley has. We can make the assumption that it will be similar. We don't know that, obviously, but the guarantee is meaningless without the loan agreement. The JPA is the one that enters into the loan agreement, not the individual counties. And so, at this point, we're just preparing to enter into that, that guarantee as required once that loan agreement is approved by the JPA.
Well, I mean, we've had this meeting with our attorneys. We need to see that document.
So maybe one way to expedite this and to, keep the train moving is to set up a side meeting or call with Monterey County and your county council and your auditor's office
And the bank.
and the bank. And, because they're very accommodating about this stuff, and there is a very detailed, step-by-step process. They're in underwriting right now, and all that material has been pretty much turned into them, and so there's a lot happening behind the scenes, but I'm sure that Rosa would be willing to have that conversation and see what we can do. And we will also help, as needed, to reach out to your 12 cities and to herd the cats, and to help as we can that way.
Ray, go ahead. How long?
Did it take for Silicon Valley to obtain the loan and the credit? Since that's the template you're using.
It took a couple of months, and the big difference there is that they did not have all sort of these preliminary understandings, and so it was a little bit of a Hail Mary pass to figure out who was going to actually step up to be the primary guarantor to the bank. And then you had, each different jurisdiction with certain rules and whatnot. I think there was tremendous ground covered and a lot learned through that process, which I can already tell you behind the scenes, and I think you would agree, you guys are benefiting from, because we're not having to reinvent the wheel and, figure out how to thread the needle. So it should be able to go quicker.
Jamie?
So, it sounds like the key here is getting the 3 counties to sign with River City Bank. And I saw a nod from those 2 counties saying that they were prepared to do that and then follow up with their respective jurisdictions with side agreements. Are you prepared to move forward as Monterey County and sign that document prior to the side agreements with all 11 cities? Or
They would have to be concurrent. So we would bring the whole package to the board. So we'd have the side agreements, we'd have the credit
so you're
agreement.
expecting to have all 11 agreements signed by the cities in that package that goes to your board?
That's the time constraint.
I'm gonna be, if we break this down into chunks, right? So I think the primary key is to get the counties comfortable with the loan agreement. And I think it's up to each county working with their cities to figure how that happens internally within the county. So my thought would be that, at least in Monterey County, once Lou signals to us that the county's okay with the loan agreement, however that gets there, then we work out the logistics for how we get the county to approve it. So I mean, I think that's up to us, and that takes the shape of every county's style of doing things with their cities. You're gonna have some differences, so I think at this point, the key component is make sure that the counties are comfortable with the loan agreement. And so, following the suggestion here, follow up with the conversation.
I agree with that. I think that the county is the key because our JPAs, we've already agreed to this side letter agreement with the counties in the format. I think we went back, have to go to our council and say, well, let's try to do this cash instead. I think it's gonna make the process longer, frankly. We've already agreed to side letters with the county. Our cities are on board to do that. Really, it's the key. Just county just needs to move forward and we'll do that.
I don't, that's not gonna be the heavy lift in Monterey County to get the cities to honor it. It's just, once the county gives us the thumbs up that they're okay and it's coming, then we can get it put together. So,
I mean, we're fine too. I mean, Carlos can do negotiations with the county, and we'll work with him to get things done. I mean, we got his back, so we're not worried about it.
So the one thing would be is that it may be that we could go on parallel tracks.
Right.
So that we're not held up, so the cities could be moving forward with our side agreements. We're still negotiating with the bank, and that way we're moving on parallel tracks and moving the process forward. Because I hate for everybody to wait for the side agreements till we get the loan agreement done. So if we could move parallel tracks, that would be great.
And the critical path for us is the loan document, because once we see that, we understand what it is that we're signing up for, and then we can have the concurrent provisions in our side agreements, and then all can move forward. So the sooner we have that meeting with the bank and get on the same page, the faster we can move it on our side.
But just to clarify, that the city of the county of Monterey is not signing up. You guys will not be signing the loan agreement. It will be Monterey Bay Community Power signing the loan agreement. The board, of course, will approve that loan agreement. That's what we're trying to get in front of the board in August. What you guys will primarily be doing, and I understand that you need to see both, but what you want to be primarily concerned with is the guarantee agreement, because that's what you're signing up for.
And I understand that, but what I'm saying is the guarantee agreement ties to the
Yeah.
loan agreement, so we need to understand the legal obligations.
We'll set up a follow-up on it.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this?
Well, the only thing I'll say is that I want thank everybody for cooperating with this. I think we can work it out. I think it's a doable thing. I know it's complicated, and so let's move forward to the extent we can with on a parallel track if we can, and then hopefully get this done by August latest. Because come September, I'm going to get nervous. I want to stay time out, but I think we can do it. I think there's a way to do it. I think once we get this call together, we can start working on it and move forward. I know the problems are the big vacation schedules and so forth, but as long as everybody's really willing to cooperate with us, move forward with your councils to the extent you can, I think we can get it done.
So I just have a question for Ray. Can you guys do an irrevocable letter of credit to us?
Yeah, for sure.
That will simplify, then we don't have to have any convoluted agreements or whatever, you just would
Yeah.
give both.
And we have
those.
I had mentioned earlier, we have the cash to put up if we have to do that or go down that route. I mean, there's not a problem with that.
Yeah, it's only 2 years, I mean, it's.
Yeah,
an extra
it's small,
1%.
we're not, yeah, it's big.
Okay, that'll move it quicker. Great.
All right, any further discussion on this? So I'm gonna go ahead and go through the agenda, then at the end, ask for any public input. To item number 5, and then I'll ask for public input after we get to some public number 5. So the next one is the agency administrative and organizational issues, staff report.
So I just wanted to touch bases and remind all of you to file your Form 700s listing Monterey Bay Community Power, and you can do that online. And so the other items, the PERS versus non-PERS insurance coverage and Cal CCA.
You have something on that?
Oh,
So we're signed up for online Form 700s?
you should be able to do that.
You can do it.
You are doing it already with the city of Capitola.
Yeah, well, there's 2 different platforms. Do you happen to know which platform we're using?
Let me check with the clerk's office and I can get back to
Yeah,
you.
if you could send an email,
Sure.
because there's like e-file and form700.com. And I have different boards and 2 different ones, and
Okay.
they're really hard to get into because they have complicated passwords. But just let me know which one it is, and then I can go, and that would be helpful.
I will let everybody know which platform to utilize.
Thank you.
Sure.
Lou, did you have something?
I think you could just amend your current one. All of you should be filing a Form 700. So you just add.
Just add Monterey.
Right.
If you could just send instructions on the best.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
I like
Clarity.
and reminders.
I can do that. So at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Sean, who's going to discuss PERS versus non-PERS insurance coverage, membership, and Cal CCA, and a review of the implementation timeline.
Okay, good. So today will be super short on these issues. I just wanted to bring them forward since many of these items were discussed at the May 3rd inaugural meeting. You might recall that Councilman Ed Smith from the city of Monterey had brought up this issue of, are we going to be a PERS or non-PERS, defined benefit versus defined contribution. I think as part of that discussion, he had requested that staff do some research and bring it back. And we are conducting that research now, and we will have it. I don't know that we'll have it for July 12th or whether that'll come later in an August meeting. We do think that the interim CEO will be helpful also in this discussion because it does impact other hiring and sort of planning around staffing, et cetera. So the long and the short of it is we're working on it, and it will be coming back before your operations board, likely to be, I think, August on that issue. And a reminder that all of the other CCAs that are newly established joint powers agency have made the decisions to be non-PERS agencies in order to get out of sort of the unfunded pension liability issues that arise, as well as the ability to pay closer to private sector salaries in order to attract utility level, executive level talent. So that's the high level just information on that, but we'll be coming back with the full report for your board. The other thing that we're working on is just obtaining insurance for the agency. It's, something that will be done before we come back together in July. So we'll have just a report out on that. Cal CCA, I believe some of you are aware of Cal CCA. It is a new statewide trade organization that was formed last year to represent the interests of all operational CCAs in Sacramento and before the California Public Utilities Commission. There is a lot going on in both venues. And so if you request it at the end of the meeting and you want to have a regulatory and legislative update at the next meeting, let us know and we can do that. But in the meantime, we are recommending that MVCP consider becoming an affiliate member of Cal CCA. That membership dues is very modest at $1,500. Once MVCP becomes operational, you have revenues and all of that, then you would consider moving into a full membership, which is considerably more dues on an annual basis because you're cost sharing, regulatory expense, and legislative lobbying and all that kind of stuff. But for now, it probably makes sense, if the feedback is good, to just plug in and get the reports and and begin to kind of have some dialogue and interface with the statewide trade organization. So that's, would seek some feedback on CalCCA. Let's see, was there anything else? That's it on the administrative and organizational quick updates. Any questions on that before I move on to timeline?
Jamie?
I would move, joining Cal CCA as an affiliate member. Looking like we're making a recommendation on this, and that sounds like it makes sense, so I'll make that motion.
Second.
Do we need to make a motion on all those up there though?
No,
On being non-current?
It's not really an action item, but it's good to get the feedback, right?
Yes,
We can go ahead and do that.
so I thought we were asking for action on this.
So, let's hold off on the motions till we do the entire item, and then we'll, and then we'll discuss whether even a motion is needed on that item. So, any questions up to what's been presented from the board?
Okay, good. All right, we're gonna keep going here. So, we talked at the joint policy meeting, the first meeting back in May, about the timeline and sort of the critical path timeline to get us to a spring 2018 launch. What you have in your packet, that was sent out last week is a much more detailed version. There were some people that were more interested in sort of the granularity of this whole thing. And so what we did was we took the high-level critical dates and we gave you much more detail that really tracks on the 6 core functional areas that we are running in parallel to get this program up and running. As soon as the interim CEO is hired, he or she will be kind of at the helm of the ship, hopefully relieving some of the obligation of Santa Cruz County staff. And then we just sort of all systems go once the startup capital is in place. And so all I wanted to do today was to show this to you, to give you some sense of the timing. Also, you'll see that phase 1 launch is indicated in April. It'll either be April or May, depending on how things go with all of our moving parts. And then approximately 4 to 5 months later, we would contemplate enrolling phase 2, which potentially are the rest of your customers. And that discussion will really come to bear here in the next couple of months when Pacific Energy Advisors will come before this board as well as the policy board to talk about the implementation plan. Some of that will be driven, a lot of it by economics, but also by the market. And does it make sense to bring your phase 2 customers on in September, October, or to wait until, the following spring? So there are a couple of more detailed conversations that you will be having over this summer as we develop the implementation plan, and the phasing strategy is one of them. So I'm not going to run through all of these various steps or, planning elements unless you guys would like to dive in or have questions.
Anybody want to dive?
No diving today.
Right? Go ahead.
So, I don't see a budget. Is the budget implied in the implementation plan, or is that?
So the
You
budget-
mentioned the economics of this,
So there's a couple things. The budget, there's a draft implementation budget that your joint board reviewed at our last meeting. And that is currently set at 2.32 million, I
Correct.
believe, to
Right.
cover these elements.
Yeah.
So that tracks that. And that's what is necessary to provide to the bank to say, how are we planning to spend this potentially up to 3? We don't think it'll be 3.
Right.
And then there is a pro forma operating budget that Pacific Energy Advisors developed for the technical study. They're in the process right now of updating that to reflect the new customer base and to reflect new market conditions. That will be brought back to your board either in July or over the summer when you get ready to pass your fiscal year operating budget.
So, we're gonna hire an interim director, is basically the question. Does the interim director have a play on the budget and the plan?
I expect that he or she will.
Because the 2.9 can change, is what I'm thinking. Million, depending on the interim director and what they think might be appropriate.
Maybe a budget.
Yeah, correct.
Just,
Absolutely. And so that's why all of that will come back, once your interim CEO is in place, has sort of reviewed all this, said, yes, this makes sense, tweak it here, tweak it there, then it will come back to you all as a package.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, did you have any follow-up?
No,
Okay. Anybody else on what's been discussed up to this point? Before I turn, I'd like to open up to the public on item number 5. Any public comment? Okay, bringing it back to the board. I think there was no, this was just an update to the
Yeah.
board, so there's no real recommendation. So anything based on what the discussion you've heard, at the next meeting, bring back whatever direction or recommendations you need for us to act on.
so you don't need a motion on the Cal
No,
CCA?
no, because it's not agendized as such.
Oh,
It was just a discussion of FBCP administrative and organizational updates, so.
Chair, got a question then. If the operational board is gonna make a recommendation regarding interim CEO to the policy board and negotiations start, shouldn't we identify whether we're gonna do PERS or non-PERS now? Because that'll be part of the negotiation, or not? Leave it out?
No.
It's a contract
It's-
position.
Okay, so we're not worried about it?
No,
No, we won't be, we were very clear in the posting that there are no benefits attached to this interim CEO position.
thank you, Ms. Patel. Any other comments or questions? Okay, moving on to item number 6. Action item, consider, it's pretty clear, huh? Well, what do you know? Consider approval of administrative service agreement with the County of Santa Cruz. Staff report.
So, as you're aware, the Monterey Bay Community Power Joint Powers Agreement authorizes the County of Santa Cruz to provide certain services on behalf of the agency. Up until now, and continuing for a short time in the future, we anticipate that some of those things will include, but not be limited to, preparation, staffing, and clerking of the Policy and Operations Board meetings, preparing various requests for proposals for qualifications of services, negotiating banking services and capital startup, paying bills and similar financial services, and any other administrative services that may be required of the authority. As compensation for these services, Monterey Bay Community Power, we're asking, will reimburse the County of Santa Cruz strictly for salaries and benefits, and that reimbursement would happen after revenues begin flowing and the line of credit has been repaid to River City Bank. We would, the County of Santa Cruz would invoice Monterey Bay Community Power on a quarterly basis. Even though payment wouldn't be expected until later, we would invoice MBCP on a quarterly basis just so that they would be aware of what costs are being incurred. So as part of the staff report today, there is also an administrative service agreement between the County of Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay Community Power.
Any questions? Jamie?
was this amount included in our budget that we adopted last meeting? Do we have a line item for this?
No, we do not. Those were out of, that draft budget was all hard costs, out of costs. It did not include reimbursement back to Santa.
So this would be on top of our budget, so it would ultimately require some sort of budget, raised budget.
Be part of the operating budget.
Right, and we could provide something, and at this point, we're not anticipating that the County of Santa Cruz services are going to last a lot longer because you're going to be hiring the interim CEO. He will be bringing on staff, that sort of thing. So we're thinking another few months, and those services that we've been providing will transition over to NBCP.
So the dollar amount that we're thinking this is probably gonna be
$50.
I'll say. Well, I think the biggest cost is going to be the salary of the interim CEO, in assuming that we hire somebody, let's say we hired somebody July 1st, and, you know, so you go a month or two, that's going to be the biggest cost. And then we've had some county council costs with the, directly trying to get this credit agreement and so forth. I hope it's not more than $100,000, but I mean, I think it's going to be a lot less than that. But I think the biggest cost is this interim CEO. As you're going to see when we negotiate the salary, then you'll know, and we'll be carrying that for the first few months, I imagine. That's what I'm sort of anticipating.
So this reaches back to February, go ahead, sorry, to February 21st. Do we have a feeling for where we are today?
The costs today, up to today, do we
I
know?
would say, it would include, staff time as well as the, contract that the county currently has with Lean to receive services from them.
But that contract with Lean, I think, was included in the budget, was it not?
We have contracted with Lean to be able to get us to this point and to assist us with the outreach.
Right.
And the various meetings that they attended, the council meetings, the board meetings.
Right, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall that was a line item or included in the budget that we adopted. So I'm talking about is,
It was going forward. So I think what would be helpful here, and perhaps at the next operating board meeting, when we'll do a full accounting for where, what the expenditures have been to date, what was covered under the state grant, because a lot of it was already paid for through that. There's already been a little bit of a gap, as I understand it, from the ending of the state grant to where we're at today.
that's why we're reaching back to February 21st.
Exactly,
I assume.
correct. And then the budget that you guys reviewed last month was from May to May. So that was anticipating hard costs, including the interim CEO. So it's a little bit, we need to clarify it, because what's happening is, since it was May to May, some of the monies that the county would incur on in this interim basis before the credit's in place are contemplated in that 2.3. So I don't think in any circumstance you guys are looking at a situation where it's gonna bust the budget as it currently stands. But I do agree that there's some clarification and accounting for how stuff is falling out right now. Does that get to where you wanna go?
Yes, it explains it very clearly, thank you.
So my suggestion is on page 2, well, first of all, I just want to thank Santa Cruz, very generous to do this, and that makes this all possible, so we're grateful. I would just suggest on page 2, at the top paragraph, that the county agrees that Monterey Bay Community Power would not be obligated to pay, but clarify that the payment would be from funds or revenues in excess of operating revenues of Monterey Bay Community Power. We wouldn't want to be in a situation where we have outstanding debt, either to our obligations to our employees or our vendors and suppliers, and we're paying Santa Cruz first, if you're comfortable doing that. So in essence, that we would pay you back from profits or revenues in excess of operating costs. If you're comfortable doing that. So in other words, you'd be subordinated to all the other obligees of the JPA.
Right. I think what I probably want to do is go back and check with the county council and get some feedback.
Okay, because otherwise we'll be in a situation where we could be paying Santa Cruz, but we may have other people that have provided goods and services and we won't have revenue to pay.
Right. I mean, the payment to Santa Cruz would come after the credit guarantee is paid to River City Bank, but you're wanting it even after that.
So in other words, I want to make sure that we have enough revenue to operate before we pay you back.
Okay.
Any other discussion, suggestion? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, no public comment, bringing it back to the board. So do we want to get back to question, answer Lou's question before taking action on this? So, being advised, getting used to county. So, I've been away from the counties for a while. So, is there a motion on this item?
So what is the motion?
What's the motion?
I move to go ahead and accept the report with Lou's request to clarify the language to have the Monterey Bay Community Power to pay Santa Cruz County back after the costs are there for the revenue that exceeds the expenditures. I think that's what you're asking.
Essentially. So basically from from revenues that exceed operating expenses.
Do you understand the move? Do you
Yes,
understand?
yes.
Okay.
Even though that would be built in as debt service in the overall operating budget.
Well, it's effect, it's debt, we're taking on debt.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that okay, Carlos?
Okay, before we have discussion, is there a second on that? And then I can call for a question.
Second.
Thank you.
I guess I need a little bit more clarification exactly. I think I understand what you're getting at, but I think I just want to make sure the language is clear. So right now, we're agreeing to not be paid back until the startup funding has been repaid back, right?
Correct.
So startup funding, let's say it's $3 million, 2 years from now it gets paid back. So now the credit guarantee's off the table, so now we get paid back. And you're saying that you want to make sure that at that point,
That we satisfy all operating costs and current debt of the Monterey Bay Community Power prior to paying the County of Santa Cruz. So, in other words, and quite simply, we just want to be able to pay our employees, pay our vendors, pay our heating or lease, and all those costs, and any revenues in excess of those costs, we go to pay you back.
I think
Let me ask.
the issue here is, because it's saying here that within 90 days of when we pay off that credit guarantee, that then we'll make Santa Cruz County whole. And I think Lou's point is, if we don't have to pay these other debt obligations, we aren't able to make it whole in that 90 days and would be in violation. So I think that's the issue, is do you want to be made whole in 90 days and has it stack up?
Well, I guess it goes two ways. So it's what Lou said, or does the County of Santa Cruz assume that that piece is part of the debt for the operating that we're like the credit guarantee?
That's what I'm thinking.
It's a part of the overall debt. It's two ways to look at it.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I guess I would posit that this is a little bit of angels on the head of a pin. We're talking about something that's probably $100,000 here, and I think we're gonna be talking about an agency with revenues in excess of 200 million. So I appreciate the discussion, but, I think if we pay off the startup loan first, and then we say, we're gonna pay this off, and obviously it's gonna take board action to do so, I'm sort of,
Doesn't say that.
it's a contract. You have to budget.
You know what?
So I mean, I guess I think I'm okay with it either way. I think that this is just not, we're gonna get through it.
Yeah, I think I'm with Jamie on this, but, I mean, if we look at the County of Santa Cruz as, they're another contract. So why would we consider them any less than anybody else? I mean, I get it, they're county, they're government, but they're stepping up to provide the service. So once we're on the hook with an agreement with the County of Santa Cruz, we should pay them. And, I mean, that's part of the management of the operations of this JPA. So, I mean, there's a motion and a second. I'd like to, there's no further discussion, I'd like to entertain.
If I could add one thing, just to clarify the motion and that everybody understands, if the motion is accepted, we would then have to take it back to the county to determine whether or not that language was okay, and it would come back to your board for further discussion. So because this is a contract in and of itself right now, you're either agreeing to accept this, or there's gonna have to be further discussion. Your vote today will not act as the completion of a contract. Okay?
I'll make a substitute motion that we approve the
Well, I
agreement.
think
We have to take the first one.
I was gonna say, I'll
No,
remove
wait.
my motion from the table. I'm fine with that. Or I can remove the motion from the table.
Pardon me?
Remove the motion from the table.
So Charles reviewed the motion, so there is no motion on the table. Okay,
I'll move the agreement presented.
I'll second that.
it's been moved in second, to approve the agreement as presented. Any discussion on that?
So, was that including the $2.9 million operation?
no, it's not. This is after.
above,
This
right?
is, yeah, because the idea is that you're going to pay the 2.9 or $3 million
How does that?
out of the
Right,
loan.
right.
And we're saying that we're gonna be subordinate to that, right? So you pay that off, and then then we become another obligation of the agency.
I think that was Bruce's point. As long as we're clear.
Yeah, and we're being generous too. We're saying, pay us out of, because we could say, pay us out of the 2.9 million, you know, we're gonna, because let's say it is $100,000, then we're eating $100,000 for a couple of years.
Okay, it's moved in second. No further discussion. All in favor? Please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? So, Lou opposed it, everybody else was in favor. All right, thank you. God, it's great learning how to play together, huh? Number 7, consider approval of regular meeting schedule of the Operations Board and adopt resolution.
So at this time, there's the staff report and a resolution for your board's consideration. At the first meeting on May 3rd, the board members discussed location, time, and schedule for the operations meeting. The JPA agreement states that we should hold at least 8 meetings per year, with the option for additional meetings, and all meetings shall be in accordance with the Brown Act. Based on the need to meet more frequently during the startup, we are recommending that the Operations Board meet the first Wednesday of every month in order to meet that April-March time. The resolution states that we would like to consider the Marina Library for the meetings based on its availability, beginning, again, the first Wednesday of every month. And assuming that there are no items on the agenda, then that meeting would be canceled.
Carol, you want me to check to see if I can get the room?
You know, Lou, they told me, and I asked several times, I could only schedule 90 days out.
I'll work on that. Wayne said he's not gonna charge us, so,
Let me check between us, we can twist some arms.
Well, let's see if there.
Yeah, any discussion?
I guess I just want to toss out an alternative, is Watsonville has beautiful new facility, great parking, it's quite central for everyone. It's got AV there.
You're talking to City Hall.
City Hall. And it already has AV, so we don't have to do this setup for each meeting. It's easy to televise, you can televise live if we ever wanted to. It just has a lot of advantages, and when you sort of look at the geographic center of this JPA, you kind of come between Marina, Salinas, and Watsonville. And so I would at least suggest that we talk about Watsonville as a potential home for our meetings, and it seems cheaper, more cost-effective, and maybe allows for easier public participation.
So can they accommodate us?
is it free, Charles?
Yeah, it's free. I'll take care of it.
Okay, does this work, or would this be in the chamber?
It'll be in the chambers, and there's 11 seats up there. And there's also room for clerk and attorney and all that, and then the people will be in the audience and full AV.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Well, I'm not the board, but we can get more chairs. I'm not worried about that.
Does that have to be asked?
That's fine with me.
Okay, so we've had some discussion of possibly changing in Watsonville. Reminding at the joint meeting, the last time, there was some conversation with the policy board. And at least that meeting would have to be here, at least the next one. So maybe we have to have this discussion again, because it was already discussed the last time, right? And I thought that there was some, we landed on, let's try it here, see how it works for a bit, and if we need to change, we change. So. Any other conversation or comment on this? Any public comment? Okay, bringing it back to the board. Do I have a motion?
I would move that we schedule out our meetings at Watsonville. If they're willing to accommodate us, we don't have any 90-day scheduling problems. It reduces costs, it increases the ability for people to participate.
For the operations board.
For the operations board, policy board will have to make their own call.
And the joint meeting that's currently scheduled for July 12th?
Leave it here.
Leave
that's already set, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So would it be your desire to then strike the last paragraph of the resolution that is on the table?
Yeah, I guess, am I making a motion?
yeah, what's your motion?
Yes. So we would substitute that with, Watsonville City Hall.
Do you need to substitute it with anything, or do you just want to strike it?
Well, my
By-
preference would be to simply strike it. I just don't know whether the JPA requires, noticing.
No, I don't think there's any requirement.
Which case,
I think our county council advising us that
yeah, take it out.
take it out. Is that your motion?
Yeah.
Second.
Montoya or Collins?
Colin.
Montoya, did you make the motion?
I did not. Jimmy made the motion.
Okay, I saw something. Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is a Brown Act meeting, right? Okay, so it'll be noticed.
There will be notice, yes.
The date, hour, and place of each regular meeting.
Right.
We do have to indicate
Yes.
place.
So the JPA agreement, section 3.8, does state that the date, hour, and place of each regular meeting shall be fixed by resolution or ordinance of the board.
Just substitute.
So you can either substitute it, or you can come back with a resolution next time establishing that.
I guess my suggestion, just to streamline things, would be to substitute the language here for Watsonville City Hall. We're done with it.
Just a
Do you
second.
know that you can take the first Wednesday?
I'm pretty sure I can.
Okay, just to make sure.
I'm okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and,
Collins made a
Collins,
second,
yes.
and I had another second from
okay,
Clovis.
so we had, Jamie made the motion,
And then I amended my motion.
and made the
okay with
motion,
that.
and I
I'm okay with
asked Collins if he was okay with the amendment, he said yes, so
Okay.
Collins is the second. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 8. Consider adoption of resolution allowing requests for future agenda items.
So at the May 3rd meeting, you'll recall that there were several discussion items that wanted to be brought forward, but there was no process to be able to do that. So this staff report, item number 8, discusses the process where items that want to be considered by your board for future actions by either yourselves or the staff, there's a resolution attached to be able to accommodate that. So, and it states that no action or discussion shall be undertaken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda, except that members of a legislative body or staff may briefly respond to statements. In addition, on their own initiative or in response to questions posed by the public, a member of the legislative body or its staff may ask questions for clarification. So the purpose of this memo and the attached resolution is to provide your board with an opportunity to adopt a procedure allowing members of your board to request staff to provide factual information either during a board meeting, to report back at a subsequent meeting, or direct staff to place an item of business on a future agenda.
Okay. Lou?
So, forgive my ignorance, but I just want to understand, one of the purposes of this is to enhance the possibility of local clean energy projects. So as we get up and started and we contract, long-term contract, is there some portion that there'll be short-term contracts for local projects that may take several years to come on board? You see what I'm saying?
Well, I think the purpose of this resolution is, if you recall during the May 3rd meeting, there were items that came up for discussion that weren't on the agenda, such as the PERS, non-PERS, types of insurance. So those items were brought up, but because they weren't on the agenda, there wasn't a process to make that happen. So now, as items from your board comes up that you want to be discussed at a future agenda, or ask staff to do some work, this will allow that to happen.
And so can we bring forward future agenda items now?
Well, once
you approve this resolution.
We'll approve the resolution, then we can talk about it. This is, we're ratifying the Brown Act, is that what we're doing here?
option, the ability to bring items for discussion forward
So once we adopt this, we
once
can
the
discuss
resolution's
it.
adopted.
Okay, I jumped the gun.
So,
I would move the recommended resolution.
let's move recommended. Is there a second? Jamie, second. Any discussion? So I have a question on the actual resolution. A member of the operations board or the operation board itself may provide a reference to staff or other resource for actual information or request further action. Now, so that means that any meeting, we can have 7 separate requests to staff. Under the way if I'm reading this correctly, not a request from the board itself. And if I put on my staff hat, part of our challenge is with our own, and I'm thinking of continue. But if I put on my staff hat, one of the challenges that we have is our city council individually directing staffs to go through everything. With that, it's not a discussion of the council, which is okay if that's what we really want. But I'm just kind of, if I understand this correctly, this would be also recommended to the policy board, right?
Yes.
And so we can have a policy board of 11 members, each asking individual questions, follow-ups, or whatever, which I guess is okay, but I'm just saying from a staff perspective, that can be responding to 11 different things or more on any given agenda. Is that what we really want?
I guess there's different cultures in different cities. I know that some cities allow any member of the board to bring an item on a future agenda. Anybody can. Others require a vote of the majority of the board to bring an item on a future agenda. So I guess that's the only question we have about it.
That's a good idea.
So we could, if we want to do that, we could strike, just strike a member of the operations board. And so it would be during the course of a meeting of the operations board of the MBCP, the operations board itself may direct staff. So it's the board as opposed to the, an individual member.
Or majority.
Or majority, yeah, the majority of the board. It would be the majority of
That's
the
a
board.
really good way to handle it.
Okay.
I would accept that
All right. So
recommendation.
the motion maker accepts that
Good catch, Chair.
Huh?
Good catch.
occasionally.
So is that just, takes the majority of the board just to place an item on a future agenda for discussion? Does that also pertain to, they have a request for staff for more factual information? Does that mean that the majority of the board or can just individual staff request that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you could ask staff to research power from India. I mean, we get crazy stuff.
That'd be fun.
The way,
So I
the way,
just want to clarify
the way this would be interpreted is that one of your members could not just ask staff to follow up and bring information back. You would have to request the chair to call a motion and ask staff to do that, just so we're clear.
Just a question. So what if the chair, any one of us, have a question of the interim CEO, whatever? Does the chair have to request all of us to get a motion for him to get information?
No, you can always, outside of a meeting, this is just dealing with the conduct during meetings. You can always call your staff and ask them questions outside the context of meetings.
And I think what's gonna happen under that situation, like we do now, right, individually in our own, if I get a council member or mayor calling me, and if it's significant, I might opt to bring it back to the full board.
Right.
So, you know, I think we need to allow some flexibility as we manage and make this work. So that will be dependent on us working with our future CEO, however we want to do that, right? But I was concerned with just inundating staff with requests. So, Ray, you were okay with the change?
Yes.
The second was okay with this change? Jamie, we're good? Any discussion from the public?
Hi, Glenn Schaller from the Monterey Bay Central Labor Council. It may already be implied in the motion, but you may want to have it say a majority of board members present. So you're not always needing to make sure that you have at least 6 people.
Our quorum is 7, correct? Or how many?
7. It's 7. You have a quorum.
No. 6.
It's 11, right?
Right, so let's remember what it's like.
Majority of the
Yeah.
We're gonna have to adopt rules about how we pass motions and all these things at some point.
Okay, any other public comment? All right, bringing it back to the board, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. So I think that's it, right? We went to closed session. So, we invite any, before we move into closed session, is there any final public comment? Hearing none?